Now, with the coronavirus pandemic forcing much of Europe back into a second lockdown, many employees are once again working from home. But as the shift off-site becomes the new normal, it's raising a lot of new questions about the line between work and home and what the legal responsibilities are of employers when their workers are out of the office. Well, let's find out a little bit more. Joining us now is John Messenger, Senior Working Conditions Specialist at the International Labour Organization. Thank you very much for speaking to us. Look, I can come to work even though France is in lockdown, but for millions of Europeans, they're back in the home office. How can you best set yourself up for work, knowing that it probably is going to be next year when you're back in the office again?
Well, there's a lot of things that are really critical to be able to do this. First of all, you've got to have the right technology. You've got to have good connectivity. You've got to have good communications tools because of the risk of isolation. But you've also got to have the ability to be able to organize your work schedules in line with your own personal needs. I mean, that's absolutely critical to making this work. And keep in mind that this kind of teleworking or working from home is very different than the normal teleworking because it's mandatory rather than a voluntary choice, and it's full-time rather than part-time or occasional.
Look, for some people, particularly in their 20s or maybe early 30s, they might be living in large house shares and then working in your bedroom because you can't all work around the kitchen table. What kind of practical things can you do to try and get that distinction between your sort of personal life and your professional one?
Well, anything that you can do to help set up boundaries is absolutely critical because always one of the key issues with teleworking is a blurring boundary between paid work and personal life. That's true under normal circumstances. It's doubly true under the situation of the pandemic. So anything you can do to establish boundaries, any kind of physical spaces that you can establish, ideally, of course, to have your home office, your own home office, but when that's not possible, any kind of segmentation, anything you can do, and also having the right, equipment. I mean, the right technology, but also the right physical equipment, like, proper chairs, ergonomically designed chairs and tables, so that you don't develop all of these, various kinds of musculoskeletal disorders and other things. But you really have to use anything you can, any kind of partition, any kind of way that you can physically separate yourself out. That's very critical to be able to telework effectively and also to be able to disconnect when the working day is over.
So give yourself a real designated working zone, even if that is in the confines of your bedroom.
That's right.
Do we work as effectively when we're working from home?
Well, I think that we do. I think that the evidence is early yet. I mean, I studied this for years, for 20-some years before this, and I've also been practicing for years. It's a bigger challenge now, I think, because also of the lockdown. Remember, that means you're isolated at home, you're confined at home, and you may also have to homeschool your children. You have other kinds of demands that you wouldn't have in normal teleworking circumstances. So I think it's really critical to recognize that distinction and then to be able to really operate based on that.
Thank you very much for speaking to us and giving us that advice as well. John Messenger, Senior Working Conditions Specialist at the